For more on the TPP, I'm joined by Simon Lester, Trade Policy Analyst at the Cato Institute. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Simon, at this point, no deal on the table. Is it a case of no news is good news, or are the talks in trouble?
Well, I think things are not good right now. That's clear. I don't think they're desperate yet. It's not time to panic. From my senses, there's about a 50-50 chance they'll get a deal by the end of this weekend. If not, I think we have another month or two before we really need to start to panic and think that this will all disappear and never go anywhere. So I don't think it's time to panic just yet.
Now, just a few months ago, Australia's trade minister said the deal was about at 98% of being completed. And as we see there, some sticking points still remain. So what is it in that pesky 2% that's holding up the deal?
Well, you have special interests on all sides who dig in their heels and they want certain things. And so in Canada, you have dairy producers who don't want more imports, and they're very adamant about this. You also have, for intellectual property, you have the U.S. pharmaceutical industry that wants longer protections for a particular kind of drug called biologics. And they want these things very badly, and they tell their governments to go negotiate hard on their behalf. And the governments really have to show them that they've done their best and they've fought as hard as they can. So these last issues, they seem small and they seem minor, but everyone has to show they've given their best effort to get their constituents what they want.
Now, how can they resolve these issues? You want to protect your interests, but you also want to increase trade. How do you do that?
Ultimately, I think you have to split the difference between the different sides. And so I'm going to make up some numbers here, but the New Zealand dairy producers want access to 100,000 tons of milk being exported to Canada, and the Canadians can only let in 50,000. I mean, both sides have to compromise. We have to understand that we're not going to have complete and utter free trade tomorrow, as much as I might like it. So everyone needs to sort of be a little realistic and figure out what can be achieved and be willing to compromise.
Now, are there any particular countries that are really holding up the deal?
Well, you talked about the three major issues earlier. So on automobile rules of origin, you have Japan, Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. all negotiating. You have Canada on dairy, as I mentioned, sort of resisting liberalization, and then New Zealand and Australia pushing for it. And then in addition to that, you have the U.S. on intellectual property, pushing other countries to raise their protection for intellectual property. So I think those are the major players who are sort of digging in their heels and trying to fight for a little bit more.
Now, the U.S. is taking a leading role in this deal and is one of the biggest economies in the deal, along with Japan. But in June, President Obama narrowly got lawmakers to agree to approve legislation to fast-track a vote that would get a vote on the deal through if it goes through. Now, he's coming to the end of his term, and we don't know what the next president is going to be thinking. So how worried should the participating countries be?
Well, there is a precedent for deals being negotiated under one president and not coming through, and then a future president actually getting them done. So I can imagine a scenario where President Obama does everything he can, but it just doesn't work for one reason. Either they can't get the deal or they don't think it'll get through Congress. And I can imagine the next president, more likely a Republican than a Democrat, saying, all right, well, I'm going to build on this work that's been done, and now I'm going to get it through with slightly changed terms. So I can imagine that even if this fails now, it could come back in a future presidency. But that's certainly not ideal, but it could happen.
Now, is there a scenario where the U.S. would end up walking away? Is that even an option at this point?
Anything is possible. I don't know that the U.S. would sort of walk away and leave everybody else to finish. If the U.S. walks away, I think it's over and everybody has to start fresh somewhere else. So it may not be so much walking away as throwing up their hands and saying, we just can't do it. It's too hard for us. Our domestic political situation with the presidential election is getting in the way, so we can't do it. We're sorry. And again, as I said, we'll come back to it with the next president and see if we can revisit it, but it just can't get done now at this stage.
And as we wrap up here, if you're someone sitting at home watching this and you're in one of these participating countries, why should you care if the deal goes through or not?
For me, most people will tell you when they talk about the benefits of the deal, say, well, this industry benefits or this industry benefits. For me, what's most important is that all consumers benefit from this. So just for example, here in the U.S., but I mean, other countries have even higher tariffs. We have a tariff on SUVs at 25%. If we get rid of that, that means lower priced goods, and that's good for all consumers. And places like Vietnam or Malaysia, they have even higher tariffs. Their consumers are going to love this. They're going to get new goods, new services that they never saw before. Their economies will benefit. They will see higher economic growth.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. But Simon Lester, thanks for joining us from the Cato Institute.
Thanks.